Chapter 1: A Perfect Illusion. Lena had always believed that trust was the foundation of a strong relationship. For 5 years, she and Ryan had built what seemed to be an unbreakable bond. Their life was picture perfect: romantic vacations, Sunday morning breakfasts, and late-night talks that felt like forever. But behind the smiles and shared memories, a storm was brewing, one she never saw coming. One evening, as Ryan showered, his phone lit up with a notification. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow, Redheart." Lena's heart dropped. At first, she tried to convince herself that it was a misunderstanding. Maybe it was a coworker, a friend, someone harmless. But the way Ryan had been acting lately, the late meetings, the sudden work trips, the distant look in his eyes, told a different story. Her hands shook as she clicked on the message. And then, her world came crashing down. Chapter 2: The Unseen Betrayal. Lena wasn't the kind of woman to jump to conclusions, but the evidence was undeniable. A thread of messages, secret meetups, inside jokes she wasn't a part of. The way he spoke to her, affectionate, teasing, passionate, was the way he used to talk to Lena. She felt sick. That night, she lay beside him in bed, pretending everything was fine. She memorized his breathing, his scent, the weight of his arm around her waist. But it felt different now. Fake. Like a dream she was about to wake up from. By morning, Lena had made her decision. She wasn't going to confront him. Not yet. She needed more. Chapter 3: The Truth in the Shadows. For weeks, she played the perfect wife, smiling, laughing, even kissing him like she always had. But beneath the surface, she was collecting every lie, every excuse, every piece of the puzzle that proved Ryan had betrayed her. One evening, she followed him. He had said he was working late. Instead, he drove across town to a small, dimly lit cafe. And there she was. The woman from the messages. Lena sat in her car, watching them. Watching as he leaned in close, whispering something that made the other woman laugh. Watching as he held her hand across the table. Watching as the man she loved became a stranger before her eyes. Something inside her snapped. Chapter 4: The Confrontation. Lena didn't go home that night. Instead, she booked a hotel, turned off her phone, and cried until the sun came up. By morning, she knew what she had to do. When she walked through the door of their home, Ryan greeted her with a kiss. She let him. Then, calmly, she placed his phone on the table, unlocked, with the messages open. Ryan's face turned pale. "Lena, I can explain." She held up a hand. "No need. I already know everything." For the first time in their marriage, he had nothing to say. Chapter 5: The Last Goodbye. Lena didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply packed her things, walked to the door, and looked him in the eyes one last time. "You didn't just lose me," she whispered. "You lost the best thing that ever happened to you." Then, without another word, she walked away. Ryan didn't chase her. He didn't beg. Because deep down, he knew. He had already lost her forever. Chapter 6: The Aftermath. Lena drove through the city streets with no destination in mind. The weight of what had just happened pressed down on her chest, but strangely, she felt free. She had spent so long believing in a lie, holding on to a love that had already crumbled. Now, she was done. Checking into a small boutique hotel, she allowed herself a moment to breathe. Alone, but not lonely. Hurt, but not broken. Her phone buzzed. Ryan. She stared at the screen, his name flashing persistently. But she already knew whatever he had to say wouldn't change anything. She let it ring. And for the first time in years, she chose herself. Chapter 7: The Unfinished Chapter. Days passed. Then weeks. Lena didn't reach out to Ryan, and he didn't try again after that night. She filed for divorce. No long, dramatic fights. No empty promises. Just signatures on a page, ending something that was already dead. But closure wasn't as simple as a legal document. One evening, she found herself standing outside the cafe where she had first seen them together. The pain wasn't as sharp now, but the memory lingered. She stepped inside. The same dim lights. The same cozy booths. And then she saw her. The woman who had taken everything from her. Or had she? Lena realized something then. This woman wasn't the reason for her pain. Ryan was. He had made the choices. He had betrayed her. And suddenly, it didn't matter anymore. She turned and walked away, leaving the past where it belonged. Chapter 8, A New Beginning. Lena didn't just want to move on. She wanted to live. She booked a solo trip to Europe. She reconnected with old friends. She rediscovered herself in ways she never had before. And one evening, sitting in a rooftop bar in Paris, she laughed, truly laughed, for the first time in a long time. A man at the next table smiled at her. Not in a way that felt intrusive. Just curious. And for the first time in forever, she smiled back. Not because she needed someone new, but because she was finally whole on her own. Chapter 9, A Stranger's Smile. The man at the next table caught Lena's gaze for a second too long. He was older than Ryan, but had a warmth in his expression that felt different, softer, less rehearsed. First time in Paris, he asked, tilting his glass slightly in her direction. Lena hesitated before answering. Not really. But it feels like it. The man chuckled. New beginnings? She smiled. Something like that. They talked, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel the weight of her past pulling her down. She didn't need validation. Didn't need a rebound. She was just enjoying the moment. As the night deepened, he stood up. I should let you get back to your evening. But if you ever want a recommendation for the best coffee in Paris, I'd be happy to share. He slid a napkin across the table. His name, Ethan, and a number scribbled underneath. Lena stared at it for a moment. She didn't know if she'd ever call. But it wasn't about that. It was about possibility. Chapter 10, The Last Goodbye. Days turned into weeks, and Lena explored the city on her own terms. She walked through Montmartre, sat by the Seine, and let herself be free. One morning, she checked her phone and saw a missed call. Ryan. Her heart didn't sink. Didn't race. She just stared at it, feeling nothing. Curious, she listened to the voicemail. Lena. I don't know if you'll ever call back. But I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. A pause. A sigh. I see now how much I lost. And I don't think I'll ever forgive myself for it. She closed her eyes for a moment, then deleted the message. He was her past. And she wasn't looking back anymore. Chapter 11, A Call to the Future. That evening, as the sun painted the Paris skyline in gold and crimson, Lena sat on her balcony, sipping wine. She pulled out the napkin Ethan had given her weeks ago. She traced his name with her fingertip. And then, without overthinking, without hesitation, she picked up her phone and dialed. As it rang, she smiled. Not because she needed someone new, but because for the first time in her life, she was choosing what she wanted. And that, she realized, was the most powerful thing of all.